Welcome to Beyond. Dave Des Rochers became a professional NFL player for the Seattle Seahawks right out of college. A 12th round pick out of San Diego State in the 1988 NFL Draft, Dave played offensive tackle for 2 years in Seattle. He then played in Montreal as part of the World Football League before becoming a TV actor in shows, commercials, and movies. He spent 20 years in wealth management. After selling his financial business, he joined Path to Happy Success as vice president, helping people find happy and successful careers based on what makes them unique. Dave, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Great to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, your story is fascinating, not only from the NFL perspective, but as a big guy. I know we've talked about this. Right. People have a lot of misperceptions about being big and what that's really like growing up. Before we get there, take us back to your early life that led up to your career. Can you share some stories on how your journey got started as an athlete?
Well, as an athlete, and I go back to high school, prior to high school I did play sports, but I never played football because I was always too big. And I was actually pretty good at basketball and had no intentions of playing football my senior year. And I had a scholarship offer, to play basketball at a small university. And so I was fine. And then we had a new football coach come onto campus. And I distinctly remember where he met me and what he said to me. And he said, "Hey, big guy, you can play football." And I said, "Oh no, coach, I'm not very good, and I'm pretty good at basketball." So
this is your junior year.
This is my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he said, "Well, where's your scholarship?" And I just told him Cal State LA. And he goes, "Well, come play football for me. I'll get you a better scholarship." So I always wanted to play football, but as I mentioned, I just wasn't very good. So I said, "Sure, I'll come out." And after a couple of days, he came up to me and goes, "You're not very good." Thanks, coach. And he handed me a jump rope. He said, "The one thing you need, you've got the size, you've got the athletic ability, you need to work on your feet." Well, the last thing a 17-year-old kid wants to do is do something that girls do, right? And frankly, I tried it. I couldn't do it at all. Right. And so, but I was going to listen to him, and so I took it to my backyard, and I learned to jump rope. And not that made me a great player, but I did well enough to get scholarship offers from Cal, Arizona, Hawaii, and I chose San Diego State. And I tell that story about, okay, how did I get there? But it's because I was willing to do the little things that, believe me, I didn't want to do, nor probably anybody else my age wanted to do. And son of a gun, if when I got to San Diego State, one of the first things that the offensive line coach handed all of us, a jump rope.
Isn't that something?
And there I was, skipping to my loo, like I knew what I was doing. But immediately that set me apart from the other guys. Right. Right? Okay, so I was big, and well, heck, this kid can actually move and can jump rope. So like I said, it doesn't sound like football at all, but I learned at that point to do the little things, to do the little things that people aren't willing to do the little things that you're expected or asked to do to be better than the rest. Right. And that's carried over. But.
Yeah, I saw the most recent telecast of the Kansas City Chiefs. I can't remember who they were playing, but they were talking about their new coach, or one of their coaches. And they were saying that what sets him apart is he's very detail oriented. It was like the offensive line coach, and these guys, and also defensive. And they were saying what's unique about this person is the detail he brings to everything is otherworldly, and it sort of reminds what you said. It's the little details and things that can really separate you from being either good or great.
Yeah, and when you mention offensive line, that's absolutely true. The offensive line is probably the most difficult position on the field. So for those of you that follow football, this might resonate. So a 24 power is the two back going through the four hole, and the quarterback's going to reverse out, hand him the ball. Does not matter what that team is doing. They're all doing that same thing for that play no matter what. The receivers are fake blocking.
Right.
Now the offensive line, however, needs to block that play 5 to 8 different ways depending on what the defensive front lines up in, and those guys move. And so we've got to be able on the fly know what the guy next to us is going to do and what our responsibility is. So our playbook is literally three times larger.
You're saying that when you're running those plays, you don't necessarily have a set play. You got to be in the moment and adjust in the moment, the whole line.
Sure, because
to make for successful
so if you're
play.
sitting there and then the safety's coming up on a blitz, well, you've got to pick up run support, right? And so you call, and then it echoes down the line, and everyone changes on the fly. And the quarterback's rattling off the snap count. You can't be offsides.
Right.
So you've got to focus on all these moving parts and then be able to be perfect. And then it's not just, hey, you go hit that guy. You step here to his armpit. Next step is to the middle of him. Your target is outside number because your other guy's got inside number coming off to backer. So it's very, detail oriented. A lot of people, when you're watching football, you go, well, okay, big guy on big guy, they're mushing around.
No, not so much.
No,
not if you're successful.
No, not if you're successful,
Yeah.
right?
So, what are some things you had to learn the hard way? I mean, you said initially that I was too big to play football at some point, and I get that because when you're 13 and you're much bigger than people, maybe that's a problem. But as you went through that process, you went through college. What are some things you had to learn the hard way?
Interesting. I think most everything in my life I've learned the hard way. So, and I don't know, like there's any one specific thing, other than, and then in life, in the guest you had on earlier talked about, what you've learned in life and embrace it. And take it with you, because you don't know what that's going to lead to and why you've gone through it and why you've learned it.
Exactly.
So those things that I did learn the hard way made me who I am today. And I've learned to embrace that. And that's what I encourage young people to do, is that it's not maybe necessarily sport as your extracurricular activity, but do something outside of school, not just to check a box so you can get into a university, so you can learn. So you can learn from your failure and from your adversity. Because anybody that's done anything extracurricular, it never always went smoothly, right? And from that, you learned, and then you're able to apply that later in life. So.
Yeah, I think failure is really important. I think it's good for your ego to fail and really hit the wall and realize what you really are versus what you think you are, because somebody inflated it because maybe you got a job that someone else didn't get, and it has esteem to it. But I think the idea of trying something outside of your scope, whether it be school or whatnot, and then being okay to fail, being okay to learn something new, like jump rope.
Yep.
Like, think about that. The guy came and spoke into your life as an 11th grader, and you're like not even thinking about football, and yet you're willing to take that rest step outside of yourself and embrace it. That's not easy.
So I've got a great story on failure that I share when I speak to young people. So when my junior year, I had actually stepped into the starting position of right tackle due to an injury, and we were coming up against BYU. Now, for those of you that don't know, BYU is a Mormon school, so most of those kids have gone on mission.
Hence, they're older.
Yeah, hence, okay. So, yeah, and this is part of my excuse. I was playing against a kid by the name of Sean Knight, who ended up being a first-round draft pick. And I was 6'7", 290 pounds at the time. And I walked to the line of scrimmage, and I looked up. Yeah, I had not ever done that on the football field. The second thing is he had a full beard, and his neck stuck out from his helmet. And I knew I was going to be up against it, right? And I had to preface this a little bit. The story resonates because I took my daughter when she was 6 years old to see a San Diego State game, and we were up in the stands. And she was looking down there, she goes, "Daddy, wasn't that ever embarrassing, playing down there? Wasn't that embarrassing?" And I said, "Yes, dear, sometimes it was." Hence my story. So I line up against Sean, and we get going, and he literally just tore me up for 4 series. 5th series comes around, I go in, and my offensive line coach grabs me by the collar and says, "Son," he goes, "you're embarrassing me, you're embarrassing your parents, and you're embarrassing yourself." And here I'm thinking, okay, I knew it was going bad, but he goes, "Sit this series out, and you decide if you want to play this game."
Right. Wow.
So that's failure, right? And so within a handful of minutes, I'm sitting on a bench and I'm deciding, okay, so yes, I deserve to be on that field. I've put in my time and I've earned that position, and I want to be on that field. But once I get back out there, what am I going to do different? Because just like in business or anything else, if you keep doing the same thing expecting a different result, right? I wasn't going to walk back out there and keep doing the same thing. So I had, first of all, a decision to make is that, no, I'm not going to quit. I deserve to be on that field, and so now what am I going to do? And so what I did is what I would hate to have done to me, being taller, is I started cutting them, and started changing things up on them. And
changing strategy.
Changing strategy, and not only was it successful, but I ended up getting lineman of the game. So, and we won, and we beat BYU for the first time in 12 years. So it was a great day. And then just to take it a step further, is that what did I learn from that? The last game of our season was in the Holiday Bowl, and I was going against an All-American, Jeff Drost. And it was a big thing. How's the junior going to go against this All-American tackle from Iowa, Jeff Drost? And I'm thinking, you guys haven't met Sean Knight? I figured it out. Well, the first play of the game, Jeff picks me up and throws me into the quarterback.
How big is Jeff?
Well, big enough to pick me up, and I don't fly well at 290 pounds. Yeah. And at first I said, holy smokes. But then I just went right to it, right? I think, okay, this is going to be an all-day sucker, and I ended up getting lineman of the game for that game too. But it's what did you learn? What do you learn through your failures, through your adversity, and then how do you put it into play, in the future? So
powerful
I think
story.
Failure is a great thing.
Let's go back, because I know we were talking earlier, and your size, you're 6'7", you're almost 300 pounds. What's that like growing up? Because you're a man, and at 16, compared to other 16-year-olds, you're a man. You look different. You sound different. But emotionally, maturity, emotionally and psychologically, you're a 16-year-old. So talk us through a little bit, what's it like growing up as a big person? What are the expectations that were put on you?
So it's funny you mentioned that, because actually I'll go back to 13. Trick-or-treating. You laugh. We were dressed up as Kiss, and I remember going to every door just about, and the majority of the time the people say, "Aren't you a little old to be doing this?" I'm saying, "No, I'm the same age as him." you know, and so it started early, that expectation, or just because of the appearance of being bigger. And you're right, the expectation is tough, because if I go back to football, I was expected to be good. And I wasn't really even that great
and you were
in
expected
college
because you were big.
Because I was big.
Size, yeah.
I had my buddies in high school that hit their growth spurt, when they were 5'8", and they said, "Gee, if I was 6'7", I'd be dunking." I said, "No, you'd be uncoordinated just like me." But the expectation was I should be able to do those things, and that was tough. And so once again, do you then live up to the expectation? Do you work and get there? And that's what I chose to do, because it was important to me to not say, "No, I can't do that." No, people expected it of it. And I think back on these kind of things, and when you get to be 55, or almost in a month, you start to reflect back and you think, gosh, that was stressful. The expectation, the word potential was always used on me.
Right.
So here's another thing I garnered, is that potential is a nice way of telling somebody they're not very good.
Right. True.
So I had friends that were good, and they said, "Man, you're good. You have potential,"
right.
Which meant, okay, I got work to do,
you got a lot
right?
of work to do, yeah.
And I did it. And so the expectation is tough, especially on a young person, which is going to resonate in the book that I'm writing. About Hey Big Guy, a guide to growing up bigger than most. And so that if you're a parent or if you're a friend or whatever, not to place that expectation, to understand that what that young bigger person is going through.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how did playing at San Diego State prepare you to take that next big leap to the NFL?
Fortunately, San Diego State was a passing offense, and the NFL, well, I have to say this. I ended up playing for Seattle, which was Chuck Knox. And if anybody follows the NFL and follows Chuck Knox, he's known as Ground Chuck, meaning he ran the ball a lot. So, but when it came to pass blocking, which is a tough thing to learn, is that I excelled at pass blocking. And as a matter of fact, the things that I learned at San Diego State, the offensive line coach from the Seahawks implemented into their platform, because I was going against Jacob Green, who was an all-pro, perennial all-pro, is on the circle of all-stars in the stadium. So he's a great football player, and how I was having success with him and able to make the team. It was funny when we broke camp, and I think Chuck wanted to test my fortitude. I was going a one-on-one drill against Tony Hill, and he was our best pass rusher at the time. And so I did one rep. Chuck goes again. I did another rep with Tony. Chuck goes again. Okay, so 5th rep. Tony is sucking wind. I'm sucking wind. And I just tackle him. And then it started, he and I started fighting, and then I look, and every offensive lineman had grabbed a defensive lineman, and so we broke camp. That's how I made the paper. Rookie starts fight to end camp. So
what's remarkable, I think, to anybody in the audience listening to this, statistically, and we could argue the statistics, there's probably a million ways to slice this, but 100,000 high school seniors are playing football every year, and only 215 will ever make it to the NFL. That's 2%. Right? And so just to be able to say I played for Seattle and did that thing is remarkable in my mind, right? Because I know with my lack of physical attributes, whatnot, I knew I'd never be a football player. I did play football, but certainly not at your level. Right. So take us through that experience of being taken in the 12th round of the NFL draft by Seattle. What is that like in your shoes? In your 11th grade, you're like, Coach, I don't want to play. I'm not good.
Right.
Taken to a jump rope, getting to that point literally a year and a half later. and now you're in the precipice of going to the NFL. Take us through what that was like emotionally, mentally. What did it feel like?
Well, so the first thing, since I'm a numbers guy, I have to tell you, it's 0.02%.
Okay.
I hate to do it to you, but yes. So, and I was mulling on for whatever reason, I was mulling on the numbers thing. The question.
Oh no, the question is, take us through that experience. If it's 0.02%,
okay.
To make it to the NFL, where just 2 years before that, you weren't even sure you wanted to play football.
Right. You know, and the thing is that there's so much pressure that you really don't get the opportunity to think about it. You know, you're just looking around, and first thing you do is you look around and go, you know, I'm not special. You know, you look, and there are guys physically, you know, bigger, faster.
You mean when you're at the NFL level, you look around and you say, I'm just average.
Yeah, and then, but on the collegiate side of the thing, it was that expectation. Early on, people called me Outland. They called me Freilich, Bill Freilich was at the time one of the best offensive linemen in college football.
Huge compliment, high compliment.
And I'm thinking, no, I'm not. You know, so, but then it was like, you know, then there are guys going to the NFL, and then they're coming back and asking me, okay, you're going to go. I'm like, man, really? You know, so it just kind of happened. And then my senior year at San Diego State, we didn't have a great season, but then I got invited to play in the Hula Bowl. And the Hula Bowl is a collegiate all-star game. I played with Thurman Thomas, Tim Brown, both Hall of Famers, Ickey Woods, Ken Norton Jr. So, you know, I'm on the field with these guys, all future first rounders, you know, and then it started to become real. And then I went to the combine. And in the combine room, if you can imagine being 6'7", 295 pounds and looking around and being eye level with everybody, you know, not special.
That's good.
So, yeah, how are you going to do it? What are you going to do?
What is the mindset going into the combine? I mean, all the talented players go there, and they're all trying to compete and make the right impressions on the pro teams.
Yeah.
So what was the mindset that you took going into that combine?
I felt I really had to impress. I had to stand out. So West Coast teams have already behind, because we're playing at 7 o'clock on Saturday nights, which is 10 o'clock East Coast. Nobody sees our games, and we're San Diego State.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not UCLA. You know, so you know, and San Diego State is, I think, now on the map. You know, thanks to Marshall and a bunch of NFL guys. But I felt I really needed to stand out. Well, I ended up having the stomach flu. I had a hard time. You know, I just felt weak. I still was one of the top bench pressers. That was always kind of my strength.
What'd you bench?
Well, they have us do 225. And I think I did 36. The most I did was 48.
Reps
Yeah.
of 225.
Yeah, which is like top 10. So, but 36 was respectable, but I didn't have a good outing at the combine. And so it was disappointing for me. And that's why I dropped. They anticipated me that going maybe 6th, 7th round, and then I ended up going 12th. Right. So, and see, back then, they didn't have cell phones. And they didn't have all the hoopla. They didn't have cameras everywhere, you know, good thing. But after the first day of the draft, I started getting discouraged that I didn't get picked. And so I went with my younger brother, who is 6'9", my little brother, and we went and played basketball. You know, I needed to get out of the house. And I get back, and my mom goes, hey, you got drafted by the Seahawks. Oh, by the way, the Rams were calling, Green Bay was calling, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have been home.
Yeah. You know, so this brings the next question. What is the biggest challenge of going to that next level of competition? Is it psychological? Is it really in your mind? Because you got the physical attributes. What is it?
It has changed to a business. That's the thing to keep in mind. And you know, and they talk in the locker room is that there's two players, those that are being cut or those that will be cut. You know, and it's just purely a business. My second season, I started the entire preseason. They'd moved me to guard, and I was doing extremely well. Everybody was very pleased with how I was doing, I got called into Chuck's office, and they said, hey, look, there was a DB that got injured. Another one had a drug violation that they didn't want to clear off the roster. So if they keep them on the roster, they have to clear a roster space to bring somebody in. Purely a business. You know, right. Chuck goes, hey, look, we protected you. We believed in you, but this is purely business. Wow. And so I'm selling cars.
Just like that.
And so, you know, which, you know, well, we could get to when we start talking about the business that I'm in, but, you know, is like I had no game plan at all. I thought I was going to be there forever, as many guys do. You know?
So this next question is appropriate. What advice would you give to college players with a goal to play in the NFL? I mean, they're where you're at today, right. Where you were at years ago. What advice would you give these guys in terms of perspective and expectation?
I would encourage them to go for it, because you don't know, and you can't control the things you can't control, which are scouts or the draft, and the draft's now only 7 rounds. You can't control the performance of your team. The better the performance, the more visibility you get. All you can do is control what you can control, and that is your diet, your motor, meaning on the field, that it will resonate. If your performance will resonate, it's a team sport, so that makes it a little tougher. Like I said, with San Diego State, we had a losing record my senior year, so we didn't get the visibility, but I still made it. And so it would be do whatever it takes within your power to get there. And I know plenty of guys. For instance, Steve Largent, that I played with. Steve, undrafted to the Dallas Cowboys, released and picked up by Seattle. Ended up being one of the best of all time.
Yeah, no doubt.
So if it's in you, just give it your best shot, and that way you can always look back and say, I did everything I could. And if you don't get drafted, try and get a free agent workout somewhere. And now there's the XFL coming out. The XFL is going to be a great gateway for players. There's been a number of guys that have been able to, just like I did with the World League. The World League of American Football is owned by NFL owners, and it was a spring catalyst for other players, and each team would allocate a certain number of players. And I actually had 2 offers to go continue to play, but then I met a developer who offered me a position with his company, and told me that I could make what an average offensive lineman was making back then, which was only $250,000.
Right.
So it was an easy decision for me to leave the sport because I had an exit, opportunity.
Sure.
Today, an average offensive lineman makes $2.5 million.
Yeah.
So it would have been a little tougher decision to make.
So when you think about the NFL, Steve Largent, Ickey Woods, Thurman Thomas, how much of the success they enjoyed, or anybody for that matter, is skill versus mindset? I mean, assuming the talent's there.
Right.
Everything you've told me now says you got to be mentally tough. It's
Right.
a business.
Yeah.
You've given your heart and soul in that practice. You're a guard. You're doing all the right things, and things out of your control cause you to lose that opportunity. So, is it skill set more than mindset? If the talent is there, because it seems to me if you're a pro athlete, you got to put the work in, even in the off season, to stay at the top level. But when you think about the NFL, what is that balance? Is it if they're skillful, they can just screw off the whole time, or is it really mental?
Well, so it's changed quite a bit. And just a few days ago, I was at an event with the Chargers, at the Chargers complex here in Costa Mesa. And their GM, Tom, and I don't recall his last name, was talking to that point exactly. And the way they look at a player, if they're going to bring a player in. And of course, it's athletic ability. But man, there's so many guys with athletic ability
That don't have it here.
Right.
Yeah.
So their biggest gauge is character.
Right.
And what does that person? So if that person's got a great skill set and performs on the field, and he's a little bit older, they'll take a risk on him if he's very high in character. If he's going to bring in a good work ethic to the team, so the rookies can see that. Now we're seeing that on the opposite end in Oakland, right? With a great player, one of the best on the field, and just not doing things that are.
He's a horrible leader.
Yeah, because the kids are looking at him.
Yeah.
And kids are looking at him.
Right.
And if you're throwing a hissy fit over a helmet, so. But there's not just him. I mean, that's the kind of thing. So the character is a huge aspect of it. And as I mentioned earlier, there were some guys physically that were probably better than I was. But on a given play, they're pulling the wrong way. They couldn't figure out the playbook. Well, if you can't figure out the play, it doesn't matter how big and strong you are. Right. So you've got to have that balance.
Right.
You got to have that balance.
Fascinating. So let's switch gears a little bit. How did you, part of your experience was acting, how did you make that jump to acting? And how'd that all come about?
Well, once again, no forethought whatsoever. And I'll be completely honest, I was a guest judge on a bikini contest, being an ex-NFL athlete, okay, at the airport, and met these guys that were on a TV show called First and 10. And got to talking to them, and they said, hey, what are you doing? And I said, well, right now, nothing. This was in between Seattle and Montreal. And they said, well, gee, we could use a big guy on this TV show called First and 10. It's with OJ and Shannon Tweed, and it's been around for a few years. And I said, sure, I'll go check it out. And I walked out there, and they said, done. All right, so I'm on a TV, as an extra,
yeah,
but getting paid They fed us great, and it's a football-based type show, and so we suited up in gear, and got to hang out, and I was having a blast. And so then this one guy says, "Hey, do you want to come work at a nightclub?" And I'm like, "No." Because it was like whatever, $15 an hour, and I said no. He said, "No, it's $100 a night cash, and it's the who's who of Hollywood." And I said, "Well, I'll come check it out." And it was Stallone, Eddie Murphy, Cher,
the A-listers,
Julia Roberts, Gretzky. It was any given night, half the VIP room was starlit. And I said, "Sure." So within 2 months, I was head of security for that club, and so it was called the Roxbury.
Sure.
Okay. Well, so yeah. And when you're running the Roxbury in Hollywood, and then it just evolved.
Connections will happen.
Yeah, and then so someone says you should get an agent, and then I went on my first commercial and got a principal spot. I didn't have headshots, I didn't have training. I just was, if you want 6'7", and at that time I was 360. I had put on some weight and I was lifting a lot. I was bigger than most. Mm-hmm. And so it was just like, okay. And then I started getting some commercial spots, and then I started doing some TV shows, and then I did a
what
couple
shows
little.
Were you part of?
I was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I was on Blossom, and did. I was Dennis Hopper's bodyguard in a movie, which was really cool to be able to spend time with him and listen to him. He was a nut, but cool.
Yeah.
And I did a movie called Mom and Dad Save the World. It was horrible. But it was with John Lovitz and some really big stars, Kathy Ireland, and so that was just being on set and doing that, and it was a blast. And we used to travel and do all the Nike commercials for Thurman Thomas, Emmett Smith, Marshall. And
Hey Big Guy is one of your next book. I think you can write another book on the Roxbury. I mean, those are probably some interesting stories and just life lessons and connections. And
it was a blast. And I'm still friends with Chris Breed, who was one of the owners, who owns the Trocadero and owns the Pig and Whistle down in Hollywood. Great guy. Yeah. And whenever we get together, we just laugh.
Yeah.
Because it was just it's endless.
Serenitex is focused on eliminating the biggest challenge to migraine management, namely the subjective diagnosis of migraines and standard migraine drug therapy that results in undesirable effects and unproven results. Healthcare and lost productivity costs from migraines is $78 billion a year, and employers lose 113 million lost workdays from migraines. But did you know that more than 95% of those with chronic migraines have never sought help, received a diagnosis, or been treated? Serenitex has discovered a patentable technology solution for the non-invasive detection and screening of migraines. We've tested our approach on actual migraine patients, and it works. To learn more, visit serenitex.com.
Can you talk to us about some of the lessons you've taken from your early life experiences that you now apply to business?
Well, so when I talk to kids about the jump rope, and it's funny. I went to one high school, and when I got done, they started chanting, "Jump rope, jump rope, jump rope." So it resonated. It was kind of funny. Is to be willing to do those small things, the small things that make you better, the small things that will separate you. And a quick story is how that actually came to fruition is when I became licensed. So when the developer thing didn't work out because land values dropped in the high desert due to losing defense contracts and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. He also owned a financial planning firm, so I attained all my licenses. And I went to work for Great Western Financial Securities as a junior rep. And my task was to set appointments for the senior rep. And they handed me a phone book. And depending on the age of your audience, the younger folks, it used to be a book of phone numbers, and it was thick.
Right.
And my job was to call a bunch of people I did not know, and they expected me to call 50 people a day, talk to at least 10, and then set 2 appointments. And I looked at that, and I asked people for a raise of hands when I'm speaking. Who thinks that sounds like fun? And nobody, because it isn't. So instead of doing 50 calls, I made 100. Instead of talking to 20 people, I talked to 30, and I set 5 appointments a day. And what I did within 2 months is I had every senior rep wanted me to be their junior rep. And then I had management asking me to make presentations on cold calling to other junior reps. And within 4 months, I had my own branch. Within 4 years of that, I was a vice president of a bank. But doing those little things.
But what drove the motivation? I mean, you can write a book and say, here's what you do. And there's some people that are self-driven, self-directed, and there's other people just sit on the couch and eat bonbons.
Because I wanted to be the best. If an uncoordinated guy that couldn't play football got it to the NFL, why can't I be I wanted to be the best. I wanted, to carry that then beyond, once I was the vice president of a bank, I got back into investment management. I had my own firm, and I was #1 in the country for American General Financial Advisors out of 4,000 reps. And my manager the next year said, okay, Dave, we want your business plan. I go, you can make one up for me, because here's my goal. My goal is to be on stage and you to hand me one of those big fake checks. Because if that's happening,
that's my business plan.
I'm #1, and I'm making money, and you are too. Right? So that my goal always was to be recognized. And not to be, hey, jumping up and down, look at me, just to be recognized.
So isn't that interesting? You're 6'7".
Yeah.
And one of your main goals is to be recognized. Because I guarantee when you walk around, people will be recognizing you. Not a problem. But when you say being recognized, what does that mean exactly?
I guess recognized or respected for something other than my size.
Got it.
And people look at bigger guys or football players in general.
And they stereotype.
And I have to agree, half of them, okay, if you play defense, defensive guys, man, they just react.
Right.
Offensive guys are typically pretty bright, And not to say that defensive guys aren't, but that categorization of football players not being very intelligent, and so I took great pride in being #1 and talking to people, and then I had calls from people all over the country asking my opinion on various products or investments or strategies or portfolios, and more than knowing was helping them.
Right.
Was being a resource for people. I'm thinking, holy smokes, this guy's taking the time to call. I better know what I'm talking about.
It's funny what drives us. So busting through the stereotype of I'm a big guy and whatever paradigms come with that really drove you to be elevated. Be elevated in how people perceived you and the value you bring. Because I'm sure acting, part of that was, hey, he's a big guy, right? Or being a bouncer at the Roxy, he's a big guy. But now you took it to a whole nother level where, on your own knowledge, volition, efforts, energy, you really garnered a lot of respect in that industry, and that says something. I love the motivation part, what drove you. Because a lot of people could sit in laurels of, hey, I'm an NFL player, and just because I'm an NFL player, and some people may do that.
Right.
But I like the fact that you're competitive, because that tells me how you got in the NFL. Hey, here's a jump rope, work on your footwork, and at that young age, you're like, you know what? If I'm going to do something, I want to be the best at it, and that's. Can you teach it? I don't know. But
well, part of it is just recognition, self-assessment, and I know when I walk into a room I'm intimidating. I'm not near as big as I used to be. I don't have long hair anymore, but I'm still a bigger than most person. And so one of the first things I make a point to do is break that down. I'll go out of my way to introduce myself, or to be a part, or to help, or to move chairs, or just not to sit and have anybody judge.
Like be the king, and here I am.
It's to break that down. Dr. Betty, somebody that we both know, invited me to a Circle of Influencers meeting, and it was funny because as we were talking about men and women in the workplace and perception, and so a couple of the women said, yeah, one thing we thought about Dave is, oh my gosh, I'm intimidated by his size. But he went out of his way to come up, shake my hand, greet me, smile, and crack a joke. And that's what I do,
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, right.
So let's pivot now. You're now VP with Path to Happy Success. How did you become involved with this company? Because I think what you guys are working on is profound, is poignant, is critical for the times we're in.
Right.
How did you get started with this company?
It's kind of, once again, was not intentional by any means. I had sold my company. I was not really, I was just kind of hanging out. And my fiance's uncle, we were talking over Christmas, and I told him about my path and all the things that I had accomplished without a game plan. And he said, gee whiz, I've come up with this program that I think is pretty cool, and would you take it? And I said, sure. And he was at the time just working one-on-one with people, started with his family, his grandkids, and just, somebody would say, hey, Dr. Ellison's got this program he came up with. Well, I took the program And I said, look, and his name is Richard Ellison, and I said, hey, look, Dick, you have something here so much more than what you envision it, and that's helping high school kids determine their career path so they can define a major, right? So they're not changing majors, they're not spending 5-6 years, they're out in 4, they have they're confident, they're empowered, they know exactly what they're doing. I said, that's great, but I could see this helping kids that are in junior college, using junior college as their exploratory way of figuring out what they want to do. I know by being on campus that there's a lot of kids about to graduate with a degree that have no clue what to do, and they're about to start making payments on their $30,000 in student loan debt. There's professional athletes that have their job taken away from them in a snap, and they have no game plan. If we can give them an exit strategy that they can kind of work on in the off season or whatever that may be. And I talked about veterans leaving the service to civilian life.
Sure.
And they don't understand what they have, what they've learned in the service. But what can you take from that and a carryover? And then you're being given a very small GI Bill. You can't squander it on even one or two classes. So if we can give them a game plan and exit strategy. And so when I got done with all my ideas, he said, well, because I've never been so excited about my own program. He goes, would you come work with me? And I said, absolutely. One of the reasons why I was top salesperson is because I believed in what I was doing. And I have people come to me all the time, boy, you're so good in sales. How do you do it? I believe in what I'm doing, and I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And what I always thought of, even though I was still a salesman as a financial advisor, I was still selling myself and my services, but I was helping them because I saw so much bad advice and bad portfolios, and I always felt so good when somebody would take my advice because I knew they'd be in a good position. So I loved what he was doing, and we started from nothing, from a concept to now, and we'll get some information out to the folks about what we're doing in more detail. But it's just taken off.
It's funny, the whole argument with college, and there's a lot of vocational jobs that are paying $150,000 a year in the U.S. that don't need a college degree, and there's all this talk about college loans, and the colleges, it's sort of like the mafia in a sense, because colleges know their student loans. You can't default on a student loan. You can't declare bankruptcy on a student loan. So they got these suckers in their college, and they keep raising the rates every year. And the question you have to ask is, what's the ROI? What's the return on that investment? I mean, if you're charging another $10,000 a year at any college, are you getting $10,000 in return value if you go out into the workforce? The answer is emphatically no. So the idea that the way the system's been structured is people think to be successful you go to college. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I mean, YouTube University, you can learn anything you want to know on the planet going to YouTube, right? And so the idea that what you guys are bringing in, where you say, look, what is it you want to do, but not just what is it you think you want to do, but let's go through this 6-hour process to really understand your personality, what makes you tick, what your preferences are, and really have more of a precise way or precision way of analyzing what it is you want to do. I can't tell you how many people I know that started off in nursing and then pivoted to law school or went to law school and said, I don't want to do this after they got their degree, and then went back to school for another degree. I mean, the idea that you could do something on the front end to give crystal clarity as to what it is you really want to do in life based on your personality, preferences, and a whole host of other factors, I think is really important, because a lot of people are going to college because their parents want them to do that. They're racking up debt. I think 30,000 is low. I think it's 150, 200, depending on what college you go to if you're out of state. These are big issues, and I think what you're ending up with is a workforce that's disillusioned, that's angry, that feels that they've been used, because you go out there and you have X thousands of dollars in debt, and there's no way you're going to get a job. Maybe you get a $50,000, $70,000 an hour job or year job that's not going to pay that loan back in any time soon. Right. And so what you have is, at the time when you have young people that are they're probably at their most entrepreneurial best, right? They're willing to take those risks. They're now settled with debt, and they can't. Right. And so they're almost like they're 70 years old. They're like risk averse, and I got to figure out how to pay this back. And I think the system's just totally out of balance, and it's really disappointing. So I think what you guys are working on is really important.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, and here's some statistics, and I tend to shy away from them, but these are very important. So currently, 50% of the kids that graduate from college with a degree will not use it. And the statistic is based on the Glassdoor and No, it'll come to me.
Yeah.
That from 2010 to 2020, 19 million people are going to attain a degree. And a lot of that's because our generation is telling our kids the same thing that my parents told me. Get a degree and you'll be better off. You'll have a better paying job. Because that used to be true. Well, once again, 2010 to 2000, a Gallup is the other poll. I knew it'd come to me.
Yeah.
Concussions. So between that decade, the 19 million people attaining a degree, there's only 7 million jobs requiring one. So you better know what you're getting a degree in, and is it going to be applicable?
Right.
And our program works somebody through that. And I'd like to at some point go through some detail on that, but that's important to understand. And the other thing is that people are leaving debt ridden, because 70% of the people that are graduating are leaving with an average of $30,000.
That's nuts.
70%.
That's nuts. Yeah.
And so if you need a car to get to work, there's another 15 to 20. So if you're 22 years old and you have $50,000 in debt and you can't find a job that requires your degree, you go to Best Buy. Right. You go to retail. You go to wherever you can pay, because that student loan payment is due within 6 months. Yeah. Do you know 400,000 people were denied a home loan last year due to student loan debt, whether they were late and it affected their FICO or their debt to income ratios due to the payment.
This has a huge ripple effect on the economy. This is material.
And that's why it's so prevalent now in politics. And they can't wipe it out. They can't wipe it out.
Yeah, you can't, but I think you're also going to have a bunch of disenfranchised people, and that's...
Yeah, it's $1.4 trillion.
Yeah, and that's concerning from my perspective. You don't want a bunch of disenfranchised people in the U.S. that don't believe in the system, that want to blow it up for any number of reasons.
So the beauty of our program is that when you're through with it, if you in our process will help determine this, is if you're meant to work outdoors or work with your hands or be a mechanic, or to get into construction, or to be in the Department of Forestry, or be outdoors, or whatever that may be that does not require a degree, is to get to work and go for it. There was a recent study that 60% of all electricians today are age 58 or older.
Yeah, we got a big problem.
Yeah. And those cats make $80,000 a year. And if you start early, you can own your own business when somebody's graduated from college with debt, and you're already a foreman, or management, or getting ready to own your own company.
Right. That's a profound statistic.
Yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit. Who's that person who's had the most influence in your life?
I just had breakfast with him last week, and my high school football coach. And the reason why, now, I'm not going to take away from what my parents did, because my parents gave us everything, and were there for us. But if I was playing the tuba, I'd be the best tuba player, because that's what my parents would say. My mom still tells me I'm intelligent and good looking. So they were there in my corner all the time. But who had the greatest influence was the guy that talked a big goofy kid into playing football. And then when he saw I wasn't very good, he didn't quit on me.
Right.
I had breakfast with him, and so next week I'm actually a keynote speaker for the Boys and Girls Club of Orange County. I'm going to be speaking to 500 counselors, and I'm going to be talking to them about all the things that I touched on, and the small things, and what small things are you ladies and gentlemen, doing to be prepared for the opportunity when it presents itself, because it will, to make a difference in a young person's life. Because when I saw him, I said, "Hey, Coach, I just got to thank you for everything you did, because it's made me who I am today, making those decisions and playing that sport, because it did do exactly what you said." And he looked at me, he goes, "David," he goes, "Look, I just talked you into playing football. You did all the work." Yeah. And I'm like, this dude's so cool. Yeah. And he's been wanting to hear me speak, and so he's going to be my guest at this presentation, because I want people to know how important that was to a 16 or 17-year-old kid, to have somebody believe in me.
Huge.
Right? Yeah. And point me in a direction that defined my life.
That's huge. Yeah. So what are one or two pearls of wisdom you could offer the audience, that if they took your advice on those one or two things, it could change their personal or professional experience?
The one thing, so a couple of things. One is, if you do the right things for the right reason, just things tend to work the way out. And I'm finding this in this new path that I'm in working with kids. And anybody that asks me to come speak, I don't charge anything. I just go and I speak because I believe I have a message. And you know what's crazy is that when I go do things like that, and I have somebody come up to me and want to utilize our program in some facet, or they're just intrigued as to what I am or what I do, and I had no intention of doing that. But that resonates, and if you do the right things for the right reason, and you don't worry about the monetary benefit from doing it, it's going to benefit you. And if it doesn't benefit you monetarily, it's going to benefit you emotionally, right? And it's going to feed that inside. And and I leave every event, everything I do, feeling just great because the kids feed off of it. And it's like I get what do I want to say? Not. Bear with me, folks. I played football. I've got concussions, so I space on words sometimes. But when you get inspired, you inspire people, and I get inspired by the inspired.
Right.
When you have little kids come up to you afterwards and asking you questions, and you can see in their eyes, right? That inspires me to come back and do it again.
Sure.
You know, the other thing is and something that I've learned, especially in business, is that you have two approaches that you can take. You can have a purpose or you can have an agenda. And what I learned to do was to look at people with a purpose, develop a relationship, get to know them. You know, so when I was at the bank, I would bring somebody a water. I didn't ask them, hey, how much money do you have to deposit? Or, hey, I got an investment for you. Do you want some water? And then I get to know them and I get to talk to them. And I developed relationships with people that then would develop into business. If you have an agenda and you look at that person with a dollar sign instead of asking them for water, you might get business from them, right? You might get that dollar, but they're going to know it. They're going to feel it because there's no relationship. And they're not going to hear from you again. You got the dollar, right? You're off to the next deal. You're off to fulfill your agenda. So if you're purpose-driven instead of agenda-driven, I think that you're going to find yourself much more successful.
Yeah, we need more of that in business.
And I have found that it resonates. And a quick example of it, I helped a young couple with a $25 a month college fund. And anytime I did anything with anybody, I didn't just say, here's the application, it's $25 a month, how much more do you need to know? I made sure they knew why I chose that one fund, and then how they could branch off to other funds, and how to diversify a portfolio over time, and what the benefits are going to be, and what it's going to look like 10 years from now. So they fully understood the scope of why they're doing $25 a month. Not but a week later, her dad came in and said, hey, gee, I just want to thank you for spending time with my daughter. And they started the college fund. They're all excited about it because I appreciate the time, though, you spent with them. He goes, I've been thinking about making some changes. The first check he wrote me was for $800,000 and ended up writing me checks for $2.5 million. Because if I had an agenda, believe me, $25 a month was not going to fulfill an agenda, right? It was a purpose. It was like, that's what I was there to do.
Right.
And those kind of things do resonate. Right things,
That's
right
powerful.
reason, purpose versus agenda driven. And you're going to find yourself just in a much happier place.
Yeah. No, that's one of the best principles I've ever heard. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. If you can go back and give yourself advice, what would it be?
When I think about my failures, when I think about life setbacks, I took them hard. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, it looks like, man, that's a pretty cool life. Did some pretty cool things, but there were things in there that didn't go according to plan. My daughter at the age of 19 had a child, and at 5 months old, the birth father shook her to death. Okay. That put me in not a very good place, because me as the father felt I should have been there to protect her and my granddaughter, right? So I was hard on myself for letting life, and I alluded to you at the beginning, but your guest earlier talking about those life events, that made you the person that you are. Those failures, that adversity that you said, okay, I kind of maybe have gone down the wrong path, but this is not who I am. This is not what's going to define me. This is not, so, okay, the pity party's over. Let's get back on track. And then to be able to take those experiences and help other people, because life is difficult. Everyone says, oh, gee, life's unfair, life's unfair. And I would bet 90% of the people that you speak to would say, yeah, gee, life's unfair. Well, by definition, doesn't that make it fair? If it's unfair to everybody, then it's fair. So you just got to figure out how you're going to navigate it, right? What is life going to pitch you, and how are you going to cope with it? And so reach out to other people. Being a guy, so the reason why we don't live as long as women, in my opinion, when a woman sneezes, she goes to the doctor. If I had a 2x4 sticking out of my head, I would be convinced that eventually it'll come out.
Right.
Right? We don't ask for help.
Right.
And so being a male, if you male listeners, ask for help.
Yeah.
Be a chick, be a woman, because they surround themselves with that.
Yeah.
Right? And there's something to the reason why.
Yeah, their philosophy is we're better together, and for men it's like we're stoic, we're the man, I don't need your help.
Or, you know what? Get over
And then you die
yourself.
early.
Get over yourself. If I'm 6'7", 300 and some pounds, and I could say, gee, hey, man, Ben, I could use your help.
Yeah.
I have learned now, that's what I need to do.
Absolutely.
That's what I need to do. You know why? Because I bet you've either gone through the same thing or know somebody that has, and you're going to be sympathetic to what I am going through and support me.
Right.
And if you don't, well, then you're not my friend.
That is sage advice. That's awesome. Is there anything you want to tell the audience that we haven't covered?
Boy, I don't know. I sure did a lot of talking. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
So where can they learn more about you and your company you're involved with now?
So our website is www.path2, happy success, and it's HAPPI success.com. Okay. And on there we have two programs, one for college students and we're gonna brand one for trades, so don't shy away. If you're not gonna go to college, don't shy away from the program, because it does state college on there, but it's gonna define your best suited career. And it's not like the programs out there today. A lot of people say, well, gee, I've taken a program. I've done an assessment. You probably very well have. And it's 25 minutes long, and you got 25-minute results.
Yeah.
So our program starts where those end. We use personality and aptitude. Personality is what you love. Aptitude is what you're good at. We expose you to all the careers that fit within those, what you're going to be good at and what you're going to love. Mm-hmm. And then from that, you carry over 15 in which you can apply your interests. What interests you? Reading, working with your hands. There's a strong inventory list of interests. You take your top 4 interests and apply them. And then the preferences, you alluded to it earlier. How are you going to work the next 30 to 40 years? Indoors or outdoors? Right. 40 hours a week or whatever it takes. Team, individual. So we have a whole list of preferences. You apply your preferences. Now you start envisioning how am I going to work? Because many people don't do that when they're making this decision. Right. And then we apply your traits. So your top 2 careers are going to resonate no matter what they are. So if you're going to go to a trade, my daughter just got certified as a medical assistant, got her certification. Now she's going to school to become a nurse. So, there's nothing wrong with taking that route, and more kids are doing it. And then our second program is for people in a career transition, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah. And also we have a $100 discount for all of your followers or listeners. Okay. So it is Beyond, all caps, 100, and then just put an S at the end for student, or C at the end for career.
Great.
Career transition.
Great.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, I can't think of a more important thing you're involved with and working on, because it's a big problem. When people first get out, they have no clue what they want to do. They don't know what they're good at, and they're lacking confidence. So it's a really bad cocktail mix, certainly for those people. Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Of course.
What a journey you've had, and you'll continue to have, and you're definitely inspirational to me, and I'm sure to a lot of the audience. And we'll have you back on when you have that the book on the big guy. Hey, big guy.
That'd be good.
That'd be great. Thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. That's it from Beyond. You can follow us on YouTube at Beyond Ben Bobo. Go to our website, beyondbenbobo.com. And until next time, remember, becoming is better than being.
When we founded Stradling in 1975, we made a commitment to helping our clients to succeed and create opportunities for business growth throughout California and beyond. Our people share cutting-edge focus in guiding the critical transactions and disputes of our clients. And we've developed a deep bench of contacts and resources to get the job done. As trusted advisors to technology, life science, software, and medical device companies. We've invested in building our expertise, developing the best of legal talent, and the readiness to serve the business community. From our commitment to our clients to our deep involvement in the communities we serve, we understand our job is your success.